Welcome to another program in our series Freethinking Forum. I'm Bill Weir, the host and producer, and I'm delighted to have with me Jules Goldstein and Vicki Wright. And Jules, you've had such a long time involvement in political affairs. Currently the party historian, former vice chair of the 5th Congressional District, DFL, co-chair of the State Platform Committee, secretary of the State Convention Constitution Committee, and precinct chair, among other things. And Vicki, you've got such a great heritage too. You've been active in your local suburban Senate district, but at the state level, you were the DFL's part-time training director for 3 years before being named the Training and Party Affairs Director in 2015.
Correct.
I really appreciate the depth of experience that you have here as we talk about what to expect at your precinct caucus. Would you show us the video, please? Starring Vicki and
If you have never been to a DFL precinct caucus before, or even if you have, we'd like to remove some of the mystery about what happens there and explain how you can become involved. A neighborhood. And a caucus is a gathering of neighbors for the purpose of discussing issues and organizing the local DFL party unit. All political parties in Minnesota hold caucuses in precincts across the state at the same time, on the same night, and for the same purpose. The political landscape has three main components: campaigns, the party, and issues. And no matter where your interest in politics lies, there is something for you at precinct caucuses. When you arrive at the caucus location, your first task is to sign in. You'll provide your name, address, and signature, affirming that you consider yourself a member of the DFL party and that you are not an active member of any other political party. People as young as 16 may participate, although to vote or become a delegate, you must be at least 18 years old and eligible to vote in the next general election. To get the most out of the caucus experience, introduce yourself to others in the room. Before the night is over, you will get to know a lot of your neighbors better, and new friendships may result. At 7 p.m. sharp, a convener calls the caucus to order. You'll see that on the agenda, the first order of business is electing a caucus chair to conduct the remaining business that night. A caucus secretary may also be appointed to take notes and handle record keeping. Next, at least 2 tellers, who count the votes during the caucus, are appointed or elected. You can be a big help by offering to serve in one of these roles. You might discover it makes the whole process more interesting. Depending on the year, a preference ballot may be part of the caucus agenda. It offers an opportunity to vote for one of the candidates seeking to run as the party's nominee for president, governor, or U.S. senator. You will receive your preference ballot when you sign in, and balloting ends at 8 p.m., unless there are people still waiting to sign in at that time. The ballots are then counted and results are announced during the caucus. Next up is an election of precinct officers, including chair and up to 2 vice chairs. The DFL has a rule that at least one of the vice chairs must not be the same gender as the chair. Duties include identifying and organizing DFL supporters in the precinct and attending meetings of the local party unit central committee, among other things. Precinct officers are elected for a 2-year term. Nominations can begin anytime after the caucus chair is elected, and it's always okay to nominate yourself for any office. Did you know that every 2 years, local representatives are elected to the Minnesota House, and every 4 years to the Minnesota Senate? During the caucus proceedings, candidates may stop in to visit and make a short speech, seeking your support. This is your chance to learn more about them, up close and personal. The next order of caucus business is to elect delegates and alternates to represent the precinct at the local organizing unit convention. If you'd like to have influence on politics in your district, serving as a convention delegate allows you to endorse candidates, elect district leaders, and perhaps become a state delegate. An alternate also plays an important part, taking the place of a delegate who cannot be present at the convention. Because a convention is a complex event that requires a lot of preparation, several different committees of volunteers are necessary to handle all the details. Your district may decide to elect pre-convention committee members at the precinct caucuses. Serving on one of these committees is another excellent way to get involved, especially if you can only commit time to a short-term role. So far, we've mainly focused on the organizing side of DFL politics. What about the issues? That's where resolutions come in. If you have an issue you care deeply about, make your voice heard by introducing a resolution at your caucus. Using the Minnesota DFL resolution form, write your resolution in clear and concise language. You'll be given an opportunity to read it to the group. Then they'll discuss it and consider whether your resolution should be approved and passed on to the district convention for further consideration. Remember, every plank of the DFL platform and action agenda began as a resolution at a precinct caucus. Once all the resolutions have been considered, caucus business is essentially concluded for the night. You can go home satisfied that by attending your caucus, you helped strengthen the Minnesota DFL Party and its values at the grassroots. Thanks for watching this introduction. More details can be found in the Official Call, a document published by the DFL Party every 2 years. It covers the rules and all procedures for caucuses and conventions. You can find the Official Call online at dfl.org. We look forward to welcoming you to the DFL caucuses.
Vicki?
Thank you.
Very informative, don't you think, Jules? I saw you in there, by the way.
But I didn't say anything, which is probably for the best.
But you helped exemplify the networking that is typical for everyone really coming to the precinct caucus to get acquainted with the other people and help everyone feel welcome.
Well, I think that that's the most important part of precinct caucuses, actually, because we renew our party every 2 years through the caucus process. Newcomers are welcomed. Hopefully they'll get engaged and want to volunteer in a number of ways, as is described in the video. And to me, that re-energizing of the party is what we're all about here. A lot of other business is taken care of, but if you can connect with your neighbors and on a political basis and become active together, you can make a lot of things happen in Minnesota, and that's why we encourage people to come.
And this refreshing or renewing, re-energizing is not typical in all the states, is it?
Not at all. In fact, in a lot of states, it's very difficult to become engaged in politics. Sometimes it's really seen as a closed club, and it's who you know and what influence you may have in various ways that gets you into politics, perhaps. In Minnesota, it's entirely grassroots oriented. And I'm a transplant, actually, originally from Chicago, and to me, the politics here are an absolutely incredible opportunity for people to really feel like they are part of something.
Real democracy.
Yes.
In many states, the party organization is top down. The leadership is appointed by the governor or the highest ranking officer in the state and reports to them, and the citizens have no real role in it. Minnesota has always been bottom up. It starts at the precinct caucus, and everyone is elected either at the caucus or by someone who is themselves elected at the precinct caucus. So it gives a sense of joining, a sense of belonging, and we've been doing it this way for about 100 years now, and it works.
Now, some people might assume it's the same as the Iowa caucus.
No, it's quite different, actually. In fact, I was in Iowa last weekend to observe for the first time, and I'd never seen their process before. They do a few things like we do, but I think that our procedures and our the level of activity at our caucuses is a lot deeper. Certainly the way we conduct our presidential preference ballot is entirely different.
So when and where are the caucuses? How do people find out?
The caucuses this year for all parties in Minnesota are on Tuesday, March 1st. Registration begins at 6:30 in general, although it can start earlier. And preference balloting starts at the same time registration opens. Then the caucus is convened sharply at 7 p.m. all across the state. And the way you find out about where your caucuses are, you have a couple of options. In our case, you can go to dfl.org and key in your address, and you don't have to even know what precinct you're in or even what district you're in. Our precinct caucus finder will help you get all of that information, and will tell you exactly where you'll be meeting that night.
So dfl.org, and then do we click on something to get to it?
There'll be lots of links. It'll be obvious. This
Okay.
is the most important piece of business going on right now in the DFL. And as soon as you get to our website, you'll see exactly how to get to the Precinct Caucus location finder. And it's a real simple process to see where you are going to meet.
Now, not everyone is a DFLer, so let's
Right.
talk about how do other people find out where their caucus is?
They would go to the Secretary of State's website. And that's the best opportunity. You can see all of the parties' listings there. So it's not just Republican and Democrat, but it is also Green Party and
Libertarian.
Libertarian. They're all having caucuses on the same night.
Well, how about Independence Party?
I don't know. Can you answer that?
They may be having caucuses, but as of this morning, they weren't on the Secretary of State's site, so they might not have gotten that information to it yet.
Oh, maybe it's coming.
As people are watching this, it might be there.
Yeah. Independence Party, they elected a governor a while back.
One of the problems that they need to deal with is, in order to be what Minnesota calls a major party, you have to have a certain turnout in an election, and in the last election they didn't have enough, so they've changed status since the last
No longer
election.
a major party.
They are now what in Minnesota is called a minor party, but that makes them no different from the Green or the Libertarian Party,
Yeah.
but they may not have their paperwork in order because of that change.
Yeah. And they can go to those parties' websites to find out more.
Right.
About.
The one difference is that although the major parties have caucuses at the precinct level, 4,000 plus of them in the state of Minnesota, the minor parties tend to have larger groups involved. So, for example, the Libertarian Party has one caucus per congressional district.
That can be a long trip
It can be.
in Minnesota.
The 7th district is it 250 miles long?
Well, that's the entire western half of the state.
Wow.
Western half of the state is essentially.
That takes commitment.
It takes commitment. It also takes a lot of gas.
So we covered a little bit about where the caucus is and when, but why go to the caucus? A lot of people don't understand why.
Well, I think the most important reason to go is right now in this year is to help us begin the process of selecting the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party.
And they do have that opportunity right up
front.
As soon as they register.
Yes, as soon as you register at the caucus, you'll be given a ballot, and on that ballot are the names of the candidates, and you can select one, and you can even also select uncommitted if you don't wish to actually commit to one or another. And so you go ahead, you can vote, and you don't have to stay. Our rules do give you the opportunity of coming in, registering, voting, and leaving if you need to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, what we really want is for people to stay and become engaged in the
Now,
process.
some people don't know that they are eligible to get off work to go to this thing if
Yes.
they tell their employer, 10 days in advance?
Do you know that rule?
I don't recall on that one.
That's my recollection, is 10 days in advance, you tell your employer, I want to get off to go to the precinct caucus, and they have to let you go.
I do know that state law prohibits certain organizations from actually having meetings on that night so they won't conflict with it. That's one reason why you often find them in schools, because there can't be any other school activities on those nights.
Yeah.
So that helps. As far as why people attend, clearly this year presidential election is going to be the major task, but there are other reasons people attend caucuses that I want to mention. I find people tend to show up at precinct caucuses for 3 reasons. Some people show up because they're very candidate oriented, and candidate is not just the president, it's member of Congress, it's city council and school board, it is all the way up state legislator, the entire hierarchy people may come for, and of course they come to the caucus.
But not the governor this year.
This year there's the state constitutional officers, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state. They're not on the ballot because they're elected to 4-year terms, and they were elected 2 years ago. And likewise, there are no senators on the ballot this time round, but there are members of Congress.
And state representatives.
State representatives, state senators.
Yeah. Do we have a U.S. senator this year?
No.
No.
We elected one 2 years ago and one 4 years ago. We only have 2 of them, and they serve 6-year terms. This is our year off.
Oh, good. Now, so they support a candidate for office.
Right. So they will want to show up at caucuses to advance their candidate, and of course to hinder any other candidate, because that's the way it works.
And to do that, they have to be willing to go as a delegate.
Right, or at least vote for someone who supports their candidate to be a delegate.
Yeah.
Because it depends on all the people showing up in the caucus who goes on to the next level. So candidates is one reason a lot of people come. Other people don't care about the individual candidates, they care about issues. They want to, they have a policy thing that they want to push forward.
Gun control or?
Well, let me give you the prime example. The Peace Corps started out as a resolution submitted at a DFL precinct caucus.
Wow.
It worked all the way up to be part of the state of Minnesota's platform, and from there was picked up by John Kennedy's campaign and was enacted into law within 2 years.
And it all started
with a resolution at a precinct caucus.
Wow. So you really can change public policy.
Oh, yes. My own case. I went to a precinct caucus, my first precinct caucus.
How old?
16 years old.
Wow.
It was a high school social studies assignment.
You couldn't even vote.
That was the issue. I found that I could go and participate to a degree. They made me secretary of the caucus so they'd have people left to vote on it, so they were welcoming. But I felt that I couldn't cast a vote on it. It bothered me. I was 16 years old. I submitted a resolution, which was passed even though I couldn't vote on it, to lower the voting age. And within 2 years, I was a lobbyist for the Minnesota Coalition to lower the voting age, and my constitutional amendment actually passed. I was 23. It didn't affect me, but you can affect policy.
Yeah, you enabled younger people to vote.
Mm-hmm. And now it affected my kids and unfortunately soon my grandkids.
So pushing a public policy position can really make an impact. Choosing party leadership, that can make a tremendous impact too, because that helps determine how many people are helping.
Right, as I mentioned, Minnesota is a grassroots up arrangement. Your local party people are people that you've elected out of your community. Those people elect the next higher level, and everything flows out of the precinct caucuses.
Well, some people say you shouldn't be mouthing about public policy unless you want to vote. Maybe we should say you shouldn't be complaining about public policy unless you go to your precinct caucus.
Well, it wouldn't hurt. It's certainly, by attending the Precinct Caucus, you can accomplish a whole lot.
Yeah,
As,
and it validates you as a citizen, I think.
well, after my experience at that first caucus and what followed, I've been coming back for 52 years.
Yeah, you learn quickly why it was so important. So, Vicki, could you tell us more about how the presidential preference ballot works?
Yeah, this
Is this different from Iowa?
Is it? Yes, it is. It's substantially different from how the Democrats do it in Iowa. And a lot of people are asking me this question. As Party Affairs Director, I get a lot of emails as well as phone calls on the issue of the preference ballot. There is so much attention being paid to the fact that we are, in fact, part of the Super Tuesday that will take place on March 1st. We're not the only state that's going to be working on choosing our presidential candidates that day. There was so much heat and light shed on the Iowa caucuses that a lot of people are wondering if it's going to be very much the same. The difference is that we, in fact, do a ballot. In Iowa, they don't. They actually separate. Pardon me?
They just count people?
They just count people. They separate according to the candidates in a big room, and then they count the number of people who are in each of those groups.
Well, did you get counted?
No, we were just observers. So at any rate, it is a one person, one vote kind of thing in Minnesota, which is
after you registered.
After you register. And what we're really determining, and this is the thing that I think that people find a little confusing, and I hope I can explain it. What you're really determining by your vote is the preference that you have for your presidential candidate, and it will help determine the percentage of our national delegates that will go to Philadelphia to vote on who will be the ultimate nominee of the Democratic Party.
But it doesn't lock in any particular...
It doesn't lock in any people at that stage. What we will simply know on March 1st is how many delegates each of our presidential candidates will have supporting them at that convention.
But aren't there super delegates from...
Yes, they're called unpledged delegates, and that means that these are people you know. If I name them off, they would be people like Vice President Walter Mondale, Governor Mark Dayton, and Senator Amy Klobuchar.
They don't
Senator
have
Al
to
Franken.
commit. Yeah.
They do not. They don't have to be elected. They're already automatically part of the Democratic National Convention, which makes sense. And so they don't have to declare their candidate. They can choose their own. So therefore, they're not pledged to any particular candidate. Yeah. So that's the difference. People call them super delegates. That's not an official term. Yeah. But like I say, these are people that you would expect to be attending our Democratic National Convention.
Now we've got about 6 minutes left, 6.5, and Vicki, if I'm elected a delegate by the Precinct Caucus, what happens next?
Okay. One of the things that...
We saw some of that on your...
We did see some of that, and one of the things that we've just alluded to as well is that this is just the ground floor of the Democratic Party.
Building the ground floor.
Exactly. And so there are several levels that you can rise through during the caucus and convention season. And so at this point, at Precinct Caucuses, we will elect delegates who will then go to their organizing unit convention, which in many areas that's a Senate district, in other areas it's a county. I don't need to go into all the details about that, but there are conventions that will then occur shortly after caucuses at that level. Then at that level, more delegates will be elected to represent those people, who will then go on to the state convention and also to the congressional district conventions before that. Those delegates are the ones who will vote for the national delegates who go on to Philadelphia in July. And so one of the things that happens when you run for delegate to go to the state and congressional district, you will be bound. You have to declare your presidential preference, and you must. You're not allowed to change, because ultimately a delegate for for Clinton will vote for Clinton delegates to go to the national convention, and same thing for Sanders and so on. So you're only voting for, the delegates are only voting for people to represent them further for that one candidate.
And
it gets a little complicated. I don't want to go into all the details,
but
it's a lot of opportunity for people to rise up to that level.
we allow for the fact that some people may not be able to actually get to that convention by electing alternates, do we not?
Yes. Yes, that's true. Alternates are elected at most levels.
If a presidential, if a person is run to be a delegate for one presidential candidate, then an alternate would replace them if they couldn't go. An alternate of that same.
Possibly, but that it's a little different because we don't have as many alternates for the national delegates as we do at the other levels.
Oh.
At the other levels, there's an alternate elected for every delegate, and that's not true at the national level. But that's like I say, that's one of those details that.
Most of the delegates will show up.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
At the national level, there are approximately 100 delegates elected from Minnesota. I think 99 is the number.
93
93 at this
year.
We have 6 alternates elected.
Yeah.
As it is, 4 years ago, I was an alternate to the national convention, and I actually did get on the floor twice.
Oh.
But mostly...
You got on the floor, meaning that you got to talk to everybody.
I got to
sit
in the nice seats to listen to the speeches.
Oh, sit.
But for most of it, I was, since it was in a arena, I got to sit in the balcony and look at the people down below me smiling.
Well, good.
But heard some great speeches.
I bet you did. Now, you brought along the Minnesota DFL resolution form. Here's the blank. I've begun filling one out for my precinct. I put in the congressional district, the organizing unit, which in my case is a Senate district, and then the precinct. Here I have to put Ward 3, Precinct 17. Then my name and city and phone number, or email, or both, and then figure out what section of the platform it would go into, in this case education, and then be it resolved that forgiving of student loans is in our economy's best interest. Is one example just of, I don't know whether it'll pass, but.
Well, and one of the things that is important about this is our platform is renewed just like our party is every 2 years and through this process. And as resolutions gain votes, at precinct level and rise to the organizing unit convention, then they're voted on again, and a large percentage of those will then ultimately go on to be voted on at the state convention, and that is how our platform is built each year.
Yeah. Now, we've got about a minute left, and one of the things people are asking is, do you agree? Well, are you going to vote for a Democrat in November? But officially, it's...
Yeah, that's not the actual thing, but yes, you're right. That's a good point.
Will you be supporting the principles of the Democratic Party, advancing the principles of liberal democracy, and uphold human rights, civil rights, and constitutional government? I like it the way it is in the DFL website, dfl.org. We work to enact policies so that all Minnesotans, regardless of background, have the rights to stable employment, fair wages, quality education, accessible and affordable health care, living in safe communities, providing for their families, and retiring with dignity and security. What else can we say?
I think that says it all.
Yeah. Do you have a closing word? Jules?
Well, I wanted to say a little bit about how long caucuses have been around and how significant.
19 seconds.
I'm going to read a quote from a young lawyer in Boston in 1763. His name was John Adams.
Quick.
This day I learned that the caucus club meets at certain times in a large house that has a movable partition. There they smoke till you can't see from one end of the garret to the other. They drink, I suppose, and they choose a moderator who puts questions to the vote regularly. Select men, assessors, collectors, wardens, and fire rangers and representatives are regularly chosen before they are chosen in the town. That describes what we do pretty good for 250 years.
But not the smoke.
Not as much. Less drinking, too.
Well, thank you both for coming on our program. This really helps to get an understanding of what to expect at your precinct caucus and why you should go.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.